All right, we are live. What's up, everybody? Man, it's good to see everyone. I tell you what, I feel like I've been on about 5 sabbaticals, man. We haven't done Eye Opener Tuesday in about a month and a half. I miss you guys. I miss you guys. We got the beautiful ladies. We got the handsome men. Man, we're gonna rock and roll with the show day, man. I appreciate every one of you coming on. We got the beautiful. I love my Miss Addie. I call her Mama Addie and Truth Addie. How you doing?
Doing excellent. I've missed you too.
And we got the lovely group, Racial Coalition with Elizabeth, Chrissy, and Mike. What's going on, my people?
We're doing good, hanging in there.
Absolutely doing well.
It's an honor to be here. Looking forward to the conversation tonight.
Oh man, this is gonna be a hot one. It's gonna be a hot one. I hope nobody's in their feelings tonight. We gotta be on the education mode tonight. Education mode. But look, I want to get into it because I'm a time sticker. I don't like wasting people's time. I like to get to what we need to get to, and so they can get what they need to get and hold on to it. Everybody sound good?
Excellent.
Sure.
Cool. Well, look, fam, look, we have missed you guys. Welcome to the One Blood Eye Opener Tuesday show where we talk about the elephant in the room. We get knee deep. I like to look at it like this right here. We go to church, right? And it's inside of 4 walls. Well, inside those 4 walls, we have a really great conversation. We got a good sermon. And then we get Holy Ghost up. We have a good time and everybody's just ready to go explode and tell everybody what the good news is. Well, as soon as we get outside those 4 walls, it tends just to go away, especially if we, it's the most segregated hour of the whole time out of the week and out of the whole world. So as soon as we go outside the boundaries of those 4 walls, we tend to forget exactly what we just went through, and we never discuss it with anyone. We lose our vision and lose our respect of what we have to do. I look at this as the same way inside our 4 walls at home. We have a great conversation about racial topics that are hard to talk about outside the 4 walls. This is what this show is about. We're talking about those topics that you talk about inside your 4 walls. We're bringing them outside the 4 walls. Why? Because it's needed conversations to have. How else will I know how you depthly feel about a conversation or about a situation without you ever telling me? Can't happen. Communication is the key to life. Everything you do, whether it's picking up a piece of paper, whether it's going to the store, whether it's telling your kids, whether it's walking from the bed to the bathroom, it's a communicated act. Everything is communication based. Everything in life is. When God built this earth and created the whole atmosphere, everything around it, it was spoken into existence. That is a communication. And that's what we're here for. That's how we're going to get through racism. That's how we're going to eradicate it. That's how we're going to just really tear down the walls of every bad feeling that we go through. So that's what the Eye Open Tuesday show is about. If everyone, all the new listeners and all the new ones that's coming on, that's the base of it. It's just having a conversation. This platform is never to tear anyone's opinion down. At the same token, no one opinion is allowed to dictate how the show is going to drive. We got to keep everybody on the same page. We got to keep love continuously flowing. If not, we never get the message. How you think Christ got so far out? The most iconic person out of all history. How you think his message got so far? It was based off love. It's structured love that he gives. And that's what we do here at One Blood. We give structured love and we invite other people that have the same mindset and we carry the message out. That makes sense?
Makes sense.
My panel is like, yo, let's get it. I'm excited. I'm excited. Listen, we have a very, very hot topic, man. It's a sensitive one. So I'm always in a mode of respecting everyone's feelings. So I really would love everyone to take just a moment and introduce yourself. I know I already have, but I want you to tell pretty much your social handles and your business, what you do. That's another thing of this platform. We always building somebody up, and that's how we're gonna rock and roll. And we'll start with my Addie Truth.
Thank you, my son.
Yes,
I'm Addie Banks, and I am a retired busiest person I've ever been in my life. I am a Black history advocate, teacher, and I have a podcast, No Black History, on patreon.com. I am also a race relations workshop facilitator. I have a course on udemy.com, Understanding Race in America. And I am just excited to be here. And that's enough for me. I'm excited to hear from others and get this conversation going.
Awesome. Elizabeth.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Elizabeth McCullough. I am the founder of the Racial Equality Coalition here in Clayton, North Carolina. We're a new organization, but our main mission and goal is very similar to your organization, Fred. We want to bring people together through education. We want to talk about the hard things, especially things having to do with racism, kind of tear down those walls, kind of make sure that we're all listening to one another, and building up the community. And that's what we're here for.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Chrissy?
Thank you so much. I am a business owner. My business is Holistic Restoration, and my focus is very similar, very aligned to everything that's been shared so far, and definitely with what Fred was speaking towards about communication. I have a holistic wellness practice, and in particular, my main focus is helping others to understand the body, mind, spirit connection and how that affects your overall life experience. I do a lot of work with entrepreneurs, business owners, so that they can understand how that connection affects their bottom line, and ultimately how it influences how we experience our work-life balance. So I teach everything from a holistic perspective, all tried and true practices that I use within my own life for the past decade and probably longer now, and that I use with my clients on a regular basis. And my focus is to make everything as tangible and practical as possible, so we can stop carrying around all these beliefs and concepts, and we can learn how to truly integrate them. What does it mean to, it's great to have conversations. I really love having the conversations out loud that we're having behind closed doors. But if you're not fully embodying it, integrating the beliefs that you're bringing to the table and speaking of, then that can cause even further miscommunication and misrepresentation. So I like to help people to step outside of their day-to-day life experience and individual situations and see it from a more holistic standpoint, so we can understand how we relate to one another, how we can shift the way that we relate to one another, and also take emotional responsibility for our part in what we're feeling instead of what is in what we think is happening, versus bringing in that bigger perspective. So that's why I love expanding conversations and communications. And I do this ongoing on a YouTube channel. You can find it under Holistic Restoration or Chrissy Key Rollins. I go more in depth on Patreon. I have a page on Patreon as well that you can follow and dive into as deep as you want to go and as much support as you would like to have access to. And I also have an Etsy shop where you can get introduced to different ways to work more holistically, so that your environment around you helps to support the overall vision and intention and belief structure that you're living your life from. And I'm excited to be a part of this conversation, and thanks for having me.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. What's up, Mikey?
Well, I am, thanks to Elizabeth, I'm also a board member of the Racial Equality Coalition. And my history is I'm a former business owner. My wife and I own the Clayton Steakhouse here in Clayton. We currently own the Morning Glory Inn Bed and Breakfast. And because I don't have enough to do, I'm currently on the Clayton Town Council. And I have a mantra that just fits so perfect for this discussion tonight. And that is that communication is the essence of success, and without it, we will fail. And that's, I own that. And I truly believe in it. And sometimes, communication is difficult, but that's, I think, when we all need to persevere and be willing to communicate with one another, to find common goals in order to achieve what those goals may be. And I'm glad to be here. Glad to be here.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. That is what I'm talking about. Well, look, we're going to dive right on in, y'all. I hope everybody has wrote something down that is listening to this wonderful panel right here. Education, baby, education. A lot of love that's coming through this panel right now. Listen, we're going to dive in then. We're going to dive in. The topic of today is right. Can I lean you one side? Can I get it all the way in there? There it is.
That was pretty
How
good.
do white people feel entitled?
Excellent.
Yeah. Look, I'm coming. Oh man, it's a hard topic. It's hot. It's heavy. CBS News is picking it up. A lot of people are starting to really dig into reality. I would like to say they're starting to dig into reality, and I've found two definitions for it. Wikipedia had one, and it said white privilege or white skin privilege is the social privilege that benefits white people over non-white people in some societies. This is from Robin DeAndre. She's a psychologist and the author of White Fragility. And that's a new book that's been coming out. It's hitting pretty hard, I imagine. It says, why is it so hard for white people to talk about racism? That's a deep one. That's a deep one. That'll be some questions I ask in a minute. But one of her definitions was white privilege is the automatic taking for granted advantage bestowed upon white people as a result of living in society based on premises of white as the human ideal. That is pretty. I asked this question right here. I'm gonna ask three questions. They were catered to both sides. So in other words, if I ask it for the white, you just flip it. If for people of color, and let me make sure I'm politically correct. When I say people of color, that means African American. If you're black, you like to be called black. You're black. If you're Hispanic, whatever you like to be called. That way we don't disrespect anyone. Like I say, this panel is full of love. Never want to offend anyone at any given time. I'm a black man. I personally, I love that. It doesn't bother me, period. Miss Addie, we're gonna have to do another show on that. I gotta eat that one up. We gotta do that one. So that's coming later, but let's dive into it. I want to ask my white family this question first, and then I want my people of color to dive in. And it says, being white, do you feel you are privileged? Why and why not? Chrissy, if you would take that first.
Sure, absolutely. So I've obviously given this topic a lot of reflection, especially since we have been discussing it over the previous weeks leading up to tonight's conversation. And the main thing that comes to my mind, especially in response to this question, is taking a look at the overall expression of judging things on external expression. So basing things on physical expression and being able to differentiate and to separate out what is prejudice based on what someone looks like, which would include the color of their skin, the gender, their overall dress, appearance, how they present themselves, and what is specifically driven by only the factor of the skin color alone and nothing else that plays into the matter. So would I feel that given the perspective of looking at this as a matter of prejudices? Of course, I think that there are many situations that I wasn't even aware that perhaps other people had different storylines of what was going on in their mind versus the storyline that was going on in my mind. And I think absolutely there has been times where, just like I could say with any other category that we would choose from external appearance, being female, being of a certain age, being from a certain region, how I dress and express myself out in public and show myself and represent myself to be. I've had times where I have certainly felt separated from the crowd, and I have been elevated from the crowd given those factors. So I know we want to keep all the answers precise, but I hope that gives you enough of the perspective that I'm bringing to the table.
Okay. Mike, my man, what you got?
Well, this is a great topic for me because I had a discussion in one of our REC meetings with respect to entitlement. And I have to be quite frank, I never have felt entitled until this topic arose one day during one of our meetings. And the thing that really made me stop and think was an incident that I had as a teenager. I played high school football in Texas and had several Black athletes on the team, many of which were extremely good, much better than I would ever become. And on away games, we used to go to a diner in a town that we played ball in. And one night we went into a diner and we're trailing in. There was, I think we had like 35 guys on the team. And when a couple of our black players came in, the manager came out from behind the counter and said, "You can't eat here. You're not welcome." And I was like, first of all, I didn't realize who he was talking to, but then it became very, very obvious. And our coach said something to the effect that, "Why can we not eat here? Or why can't our team members join us?" It's because they're not welcome. Our coach said, "That's fine." And we turned around and walked out. And I can pretty much equivocally say that's the first time that I ever really experienced racism in true live living color, no pun intended. But when that topic came up that night, I really reflected, and I've reflected a lot since then. And I think for me, a lot of the entitlement was completely unconscious. I never realized it. And I've never felt that way. I belong to an organization called One Body, One Voice several years ago. And our mantra was, "We know no color." And the object is that we are all brothers and sisters, regardless of race, color, creed. And I've always felt that I have lived that embodiment. But until that topic came up, it never dawned on me that, yes, I do receive a lot of entitlements because of my color. And quite frankly, it made me extremely sad. And it's something that I have a real hard time accepting. But it's true. It's really true. And it saddened me. And it shouldn't be that way. All people should be entitled. There should not be any discrimination in my book. And I've always tried to live that way. But that was, it really took me by surprise. And quite frankly, I was embarrassed. No other way to put it.
I feel you, man. I feel you. We've had similar incidents, especially with me coaching for many, many years, almost 20 years now. I have seen some really, really disturbing acts, even on the field and off the field. So I know exactly where you're coming from. I believe that the unknown is the scary part. The disservice that is being missed is the scary part. And I think that we as a people in general, and then as white people in general, I've heard this quite a bit, and it, to some degree, it kind of bothers me, but to some degree, I've learned over the years that certain things just don't. But when they say they don't know, that's why this show is on effect. That's why we have race relationship conversations, because it's so many. I mean, both of you have just stated that you really didn't know until an incident happened. Whereas people of color, it's out the gate. Elizabeth, what you got?
Could you do me a favor, Fred? Could you just repeat the question? I just want to make sure I remember the question.
It says, being white, do you feel you are privileged? Why or why not? For us, it'd be like more, do we feel like white people feel like they're privileged? You're on both sides. You got two questions.
Yeah, so I feel like I've said this before, to Chrissy's point about how everything kind of at some point overlaps in some ways, right? Because people are judged on the color of their skin, yes, but there are other things that are, that they're also simultaneously being judged on a lot of the time. I've always considered myself a biracial woman, but I am very aware that on the outward appearance, most people will expect me that I am white, or more likely actually Hispanic, but they're usually very surprised to find out that my mother is Black. So my experience is different just because of that. you know. I would say that I've definitely experienced privilege on my end that I was unaware of early on. And even later in life, I feel like we were talking about this not that long ago, where when you start having these conversations and you start educating yourself and you become aware of what do you mean by privilege, right? Because I was actually someone who was offended the first time I was told, oh, well, you have privilege. And I'm like, well, I didn't do anything. And that's when I had to really understand that it's not something I did. It's not something I took by force or was malicious about in any kind of way. And I was like, oh, I'm like, this is just me operating my day-to-day life. And these are things given to me without my asking, without my doing anything to take them necessarily. And so that's what made me more aware of when it was happening, whether it was at work, whether it was in my social life, whatever it might be. So that's allowed me to kind of be more honest with people when I see it happening, because now when I can recognize that it's happening, I can call people out on it when it's happening. On the flip side, I've had, I don't know how to explain it. I've had what I am be used to other people's advantage when it's convenient. For example, I will have people say things like, oh yeah, so yeah, well, because she's Black, she does that because she's Black. You didn't know she was Black, but she does that, you know, that's her Black side. Or that's, you know what I mean? Like it's weird, it's a little weird, and it's hard to explain, but then I'll have the flip side, oh, that's her white side, that's her white side. And I'm like, okay, so what do we do? Like, you know, no matter what I'm doing, it's one side or the other that's showing, I guess. Which is weird, it happens a lot, and it's just really weird a lot of the times. But yes, I will say that more often than not, I feel like I experience privilege in a lot of instances. And honestly, when I am around the Black side of my family, when we're out in public, when we're doing whatever, I will experience privilege in a way the rest of them do not. And I am very aware when I am with them. Which is important. I think I need to experience that. I need to be constantly aware of that so that you can push back against it, because that's what it's really about. I mean, nothing is going to change until we have to confront ourselves first. I think that was something else that Christy had said at one point. It starts internally before you can address it on the outside.
You got to look at something. I like to compare certain situations because, you know, just like growing, I'm married, right? Been married almost 20 years. When my sons do something out of the ordinary, it's just not bright, it's automatically my fault. When they do something smart and just highly intelligent, oh, that's your mama's side. That's your mama's side of things.
Okay, well, that's like, but perfect example. That's like when I was told, especially growing up, many times when people found out that my mother was Black, they were like, oh, you got the good hair. And we used, as a kid, you're just like, oh, as a kid, because you have no point of reference, you're just like, oh, well, good, because I don't want bad hair. You don't know what they mean by that. You don't know what that implies, you know? And then as you get older, you begin to realize, oh, that's not a compliment. That's actually, it's offensive.
Yeah.
It's offensive, but they say it in such a way that you're supposed to take it as, oh, well, thank you. And it's like, no.
No.
You know,
I feel you on that. Miss Ed, I got to bring you in because it's when you come in, if you don't mind, we both know, and we've had this discussion, there's an elite group that this country that was based off of. There's an elite group, and this is where a lot of this stemmed from, is that elite group. You have an attachment to that elite group because of the color of your skin. And it's very unfortunate, to be honest with you, because it's only one elite group, in my opinion. And I'll tell you what that is at the end of the show. Go ahead, Ms. Annie.
I love the conversation because just talking about this one subject, privilege, and in a few comments, we ripped apart racism in America because it's socialization. It's awareness of things that we weren't aware of before that makes other people's experiences different from our own based on race. So it's easy to talk about privilege. But if somebody says, well, racism in America, oh, there's, we kind of, straighten our backs a little bit. But that's exactly what we're talking about. Trying to stay within my 3 minutes. Let me just say that entitlement, privilege is subtle. It's socialization. People we respect have taught us to say our prayers, have taught us to say thank you, and have taught us, even in a very subtle way, how to assess other people. Michael, I'm so pleased that you had the experience you had and you shared it. My background is I grew up in military, part of my life. And it's interesting, on Facebook last year, we were stationed in upper Michigan, and just white folks, and then they put a military base, and so 5 Black people in the high school. But my brother and a few others were athletes, and he mentioned on Facebook the same thing. They went away, they were at a away game, and the Blacks were treated differently, and it was his first confrontation with racism. But that's why sensitivity is what I'm sensing is so relevant, because it tears apart everything that we thought we knew.
Good point.
That's why listening is so important. I will end this with every one of us are privileged within our in-group.
That's a good point.
My niece-in-law is Indian. And my nephew made the comment that when they go on cruises, they get all this good stuff because his wife is Indian. And the wait staff.
And she got a good hair. She got a good hair.
So, privilege. Let me tell you one more thing. It is so subtle. I shared this earlier in conversation, that when I was growing up, if I was approaching Walmart's door and a white person was about to enter at the same time as myself, my training taught me to wait until she went in first. Well, I reversed that. And I did not give leeway. I continued. The look on her face was priceless, because we don't think about our privilege. We don't know it, but it is involved in every part of our lives, and that's all I'll say.
It is indeed, definitely. It's a I call it deserving factor. And the reason I go to that, same thing happened. Well, not same thing, but Mike, I've been coaching for years, and I've been the head coach. Black man, been the head coach, predominantly white kids and predominantly white area that I'm in. And being a head coach, a football coach, for quite some time, the referees supposed to know who the head coach is. They know it because they meet the head coach before every game. That's in every sport, baseball, basketball, it doesn't matter. You meet the head honcho before the game, so you can go to rules and regulations of all what's going on. Well, these cats decided to when the penalties call, when the penalties called in football, the head coach is the one who makes the decision to take the penalty or decline it. So these referees, which were white as well, would go to the white coaches and ask. And I'm sitting there, and I'm cool. It's all gravy. And they would ask you, say, well, what do you want to? You want to decline or you want to accept? So these are my fellow man. We cool, everything gravy. They look down at me and they start laughing and say, that's the head coach down there. This happened to me way more than once. So one of the ways I combated it was saying, we pay referees to come to our games and ref. When they don't do a good job, guess what? Your money don't get paid at Saturday. Your check don't come to you. I'm one of them people that would take your check. So you can either recognize, or you can just not get paid, or you can just not be welcome on this field anymore. And it's sad that you have to go to that level. But the only way you understand it, that you don't have that deserving factor, is you got to put stipulations in, and you got to put something that's going to hurt. And the way that is sad is that you have to hurt the pocket of people to get them to understand something. And that's the direction that we're going. Miss Addie, you hit it. The next question pretty much already was, do you think white privilege has anything to do with racism? Chrissy, feel free, Mike, whichever one. Let's jump in.
I mean, I think they go very much hand in hand. I can't see white privilege existing without racism. Maybe considering it maybe a byproduct of racism, possibly.
She froze.
She froze. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I have to agree kind of with what she's saying. I'm kind of seeing it as like part of the structure that keeps this division going on, and this educating the public on how they should behave and what's expected of them. Because my mind always goes back to, where do we get the preconceived notions from? Yes, some of us are directly influenced, but a lot of us, like Addie pointed out, it's so subtle. You're subtly told who people are by the stories that are told on the biggest platforms that we're all exposed to. We're told storylines and narratives about individual characters and what they're like and what to expect long before any of us interact with people outside of our individual groups and our small circles that we interact with. So if you're not exposed in a very diverse area, and you can only go on those big stories that are being told, well, you don't even realize that you're being told not only just one person's version of a story. It's not just the winners that are telling the story. There's a formula, there's a recipe, there's a system in place behind it all. And one of the easiest ways to get us all to fall into line is say, look at the color of their skin, and this is what you can expect. So I feel like they are intertangled or within the same structure or concept. And I've thought too about this idea of entitlement. I totally agree with what Michael had said, and Addie kind of echoed that as well. And Fred, you might have even said something. We're all really synergistic here in our perspectives, but entitlement is, everybody is entitled. We are all entitled equally. And part of my reflections that came up leading to this conversation is it a matter of a certain section having entitlement, or is it more a mass not realizing that we are all entitled? So is it a matter of someone's actions of acting out what they know that they're entitled to? Because everybody's entitled to eat at a restaurant. Everybody's entitled to coach a football team. Everybody's entitled to live this human experience. And how many people are actually taking authority over their own life and broadening their awareness about the storylines that are running in the back of their head and questioning where they came from and does it line up with your beliefs, and taking that time to do that internal self-reflection work, or to be privileged enough to be exposed to it. I spent the last better part of the last decade doing volunteer work with a local nonprofit organization that helps individuals that have been incarcerated or dealing with addictions, or just haven't figured out how to stay a productive citizen, and how to get employment and how to get gainful employment and move out of the underemployed level. So I was exposed to all races going through that program. And what I've noticed is how a big difference is who really utilizes what is available to them and who shows up expecting somebody else to do the work. And a lot of it has to do with not the commonality being the color of the skin, but more the neighborhoods that they came from, the mindsets that they were carrying, their own personal experience. And just like Addie said, how much subtle training has happened and how you behave and what is acceptable and what someone else is gonna do. All of that really plays a big, heavy part in it. And here I am, 10 years ago, looking much younger than I do now. I'm this young, obviously white female who's coming in to help them to understand that there's another way to approach life and how to think about things. I dealt with a lot of the reverse of expectations of who they think I am as someone coming in, and what I've been exposed to and what I've experienced and what I've been through. And so, yeah, I looked at this from so many different angles, and I saw that all of us, I believe, in my personal belief system, I believe that we all have access to the same resources. And it's a matter of how we show up in our life. And that's based on how we know who we know ourselves to be, and what we allow for ourselves in our life. Because just like you have that right away to walk in the doorway first, just as anybody else who approaches it first, it's still the story that you have going on inside yourself as you have this silent interaction with another. It's still the story that you tell yourself as you're walking around that store, and days later. All of that plays a part in this. And until we wake up to all that happening inside, or someone can expose us and help us to see this for ourselves, then a lot of us end up in the wrong conversations. And it's more the conversation that whole structure is set up to keep us in, instead of the one that allows us to move outside of it. Because what if we actually could have a different experience if we stopped having the conversation of who's at fault and started having the conversation of who are you knowing yourself to be, and how are you showing up in all of these situations, and in questioning how you interact with people and the feelings that come up inside of you. Is it the action that somebody else takes, or is it the way that you feel about how you interpret that action? Is that really what needs to be looked at? So
Yeah.
Thank you. I know I went way over, but y'all sparked
You,
some
you,
good
you
stuff.
got,
Thank
girl,
you.
you got a lot to say. You got a lot to say. That's all. We need to be educated. So, what you got, Mike?
Well, I agree with Chrissy to a great extent, because I think you need to look at it from both those points of view. But one of the things that comes up for me, and I certainly don't condone this, but if you look back at the cultures that persisted back in the 1600s, bringing us all the way up into the 21st century, what I experience is that folks of color never had a chance. And what I mean by that is that, as we all know, Blacks were brought over here as slaves. That to me is a terrible, terrible culture. But and we know that it started even before those folks got here. This goes back to Europe and Africa. And the culture part of it that I'm trying to communicate is the fact that I think minorities, in many respects, never had a chance. And with, quote, white supremacy, and I use that term carefully, it just made it so much more difficult for people of color to be able to advance. White supremacy, I think, in my humble opinion, did everything it could to suppress that advancement. And I think we see it more today because we're much more, how would I put it? Our society is much more technological, and it allows us to see what's going on. We see it on the TV, we hear it on the radio, we see it as we walk out the door. Miss Addie's example is really great. And when you were sharing that, Miss Addie, I'm sitting here thinking, pardon my French, but damn, I'm always coming from a place of, there's a lady coming up to the door, I need to be sure that she goes through that door first. And it's not about color, it's about, that's how I was brought up, thank goodness. And I think that's part of why I was so damn baffled with that incident in that restaurant as a kid on a football team, because I hadn't experienced that. And I said, what is this? This is not right. And that is a person even coming from the South, growing up in Texas, in South Texas. But I do feel that culture plays a part in this. And I think what we and many, many others are trying to do is to evolve out of that. I think this show is a great example of that. And I think it brings with us a lot of education and a lot of knowledge. And that to me is huge. To me, education, the more we can educate folks, the better off we're all going to be. And I realize that there are people out there, unfortunately, they're not going to change. For whatever the reason, they're not going to change. But we need to be above that. And we all know there are great people out there, and then there are some folks that aren't so great. But we can be above that, and we can continue to do the things that we're doing right now, like this podcast is an example, to continue to get the word out and to try to create an evolution to change that form of culture. Because to me, it doesn't work. It ain't right. And I come from that place. Just saying.
I like what you're saying. What you got, Miss Eddie?
When Elizabeth was on, I was looking at 5 good people. 5 people that I am proud to call my friends, regardless of how long we've been friends. I'm looking at intelligent lovers of America, good people. Your question about privilege and racism, sometimes not. My 5 friends, me and my 4 friends, but then I friend myself too. Yeah. We have to understand it's about stratification systems. In countries where there is no race variable, there is privilege based on stratification systems. Your family background, how much is in the bank account, your caste, your tribe. So we have to, in addition to the racism, see, in America and many other places, racism is part of the stratification system. But to understand it, we have to look at stratification systems and why they are necessary. Why is it necessary for the fellow to say we don't serve people like that? Because there's always a good reason for everything, whether we appreciate it, whether it's good or bad. It's what we tell our children because it's the rule. You don't need to understand it. So it is important that we see racism when the police pulls up and, shoots another person dead. But we also see power, we see authority, we may see some resentment. And all of those things go into privilege variables. That's all.
I get it. I understand it. And I appreciate all of your answers. Real quick before I close it out, because we get to that point, and Elizabeth's coming back in, ain't she sweet?
Oh, good. I was
Yeah.
hoping she would be able to.
Uh-huh. Good.
Thanks the Lord.
Can you hear us?
I did it. I
You
figured
did
it
it.
out.
Praise the Lord.
Half of the podcast, but I figured it out.
Well, go ahead and finish. I don't want to leave you out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Now I completely forget. It took me so long to get the internet back on. What was I talking about?
Racism and privilege.
Okay.
Yes,
okay. How they go
race.
hand in hand. They go hand in hand. Right. Okay. I think I remember. Yeah. So I think maybe white privilege is a byproduct of racism, but I don't think one exists necessarily without the other. But I do think privilege exists because if it weren't based off of race, it'd be based off of something else. So that's where I was going with that. So sorry. Got a little frazzled there trying to fix the internet.
Settle down, you're good.
That was
Yeah.
perfect. You like perfectly summarized what Addie had just shared. So that was
Yeah.
like
Oh,
perfect.
okay, good. That's good.
But that's good. Look, I'm gonna do this right here. We're gonna do real quick. There's one last question. How do you feel, and how do you think, rather, we should combat it? Since we know it's there, we all agree that white privilege is in existence, correct?
It exists.
All right. So if everybody agrees, so what's your way that you plan on in your near future of combating it?
I think that our conversations are important because as long as it's an issue, we have to keep being willing to talk about it. Because every time I talk about it, no matter who it's with, whether it's another person of color or somebody who's white, I usually take something new away from that conversation, a perspective that maybe I hadn't considered, or something about it that I didn't know. Because again, we operate in our own little bubble, and all we have to go off of is what we experience and how people interact with us, right? Because it's not just how we behave towards other people, it's how other people behave towards us that dictate what our reality is and what we experience every day. And then for me personally, it's addressing it, calling it out when I see it, and getting comfortable doing that, because that's one of the hardest things. And I would say, it's a lot easier to do with people you don't know, because you don't care what they think about you. You don't care about offending them. You don't care about hurting feelings. And for all you know, you're probably not going to see them again. It is really hard when it's family and friends. It's really hard because you love those people, you care about those people, you don't want to lose those people, but at the same time, you can't allow certain things to go unchecked, because you don't grow, they don't grow. They don't even, a lot of things are done out of ignorance. I'm not trying to make excuses for anybody, but you have to check them. It's like anything else with a friend or someone you care about. If you continue to let them continue in destructive behavior, then are you really a friend? Are you really looking out for what's best for them? Are you giving them a chance to grow as a person? So I think that's some of the places where we start.
Awesome. Next. Go ahead, Chrissy.
I'll piggyback off of that and say conversation and communication is absolutely at least an ingredient in the recipe for what resolution would be. I'm a big believer that there's not a situation that is possible that further and more effective communication cannot remedy and find the resolution for. So with conversation and communication comes what Addie had highlighted earlier. We need to learn how to listen. A lot of us think, oh, I'm great at conversation. Let me tell you all about what I think and why I think that way and why you should think this way too. But it's a whole nother skill set to learn how to learn or how to listen and how to bring compassionate communication to each other, I think is very important. A lot of people are making some great points, but the way that they are representing them, it's blurring the message. So if not only the communications that we're having, the conversations that we're having, but really taking responsibility for the character that we are choosing to represent ourselves to be, regardless of the choices that other characters around us decide for themselves. So I'm going to add to that list, learn how to handle, manage, and understand emotions. Not understanding our emotional self has been a big detriment in so many ways to our society. And it's a big perpetuator as to what keeps these cycles going. And to be able to manage your own emotion, process what feelings are coming up, it is such a handy and essential, I believe, essential tool in your toolkit that is needed in this world that we are all actively creating, co-creating together as we have these conversations, as we come together, as we risk saying the wrong thing and being taken the wrong way. And we can learn how to trust ourselves and manage what comes up inside so that we can listen effectively and not just battle the person in our head while they're sharing what it is that they have to say. Because you might not like the message, you might not like the way it's coming across, but if you can set aside someone's tone, set aside someone's body language, and set aside all that conditioning that tells you what that body language and tone means is going to happen and what it means about you, you can actually hear what's being said. And that's when I've had some of my most humble.
Where she learned to do that?
It's where I have learned to have my most humble. I'm a chameleon, y'all. So watch out.
See, that's what I was
I'm
thinking.
a chameleon.
Hey, that's what Elizabeth meant. Elizabeth meant that a while ago. That's the white side and that's the black side.
That's exactly one of those moments.
Yes, true.
So yes, when you can set those attributes to the side and just hear what's being said, I have had some of my most pivotal, life-changing, character developing, humbling, and grateful moments when I can set aside words that were right, that were said in the wrong way or at the wrong time. And that doesn't happen because everybody just says everything right to me at the right way and the right time now. That is definitely not what happens. But learning how to manage what comes up inside of me. And it really comes down to understanding fundamentally who I am at my core, or who I believe myself to be, and also extending that same exact essence out to every single person. So where you're saying brothers and sisters, where we're saying our tribe, our family, our kin, I look at this as one race. We are the human race, and this is the mess that we got brought into, and we can only be brought into it if we're part of the solution. So if you don't enjoy being part of the problem, then start being part of the solution, and not by telling people how to be the solution, but by being it. And I think that that's really the highlight of what I have to say.
What you got, Mike? How would you combat it?
Well, Chrissy hit the nail on the head as far as I'm concerned about the listening. But and just one thing to add to that is, for me, listening is extremely important. And I know she knows this because she actually said it just in different words. You need to really hear what's being said. There's one thing to listen, but there's another thing to get it. And if you allow your emotions to overrun a conversation, it's going to take you right out of the really hearing what's being said, in my book. And it's because all of a sudden you take a position instead of trying to be, how would I say, not buying in to one side or the other, but trying to be objective and get the whole conversation. And I know sometimes that gets really difficult because you might be dealing with someone who is really hot to trot and on a position. Yeah. And I've had experiences like that. I'm sure we all have. And what I do is I let them run. And I try to take the important pieces out of what they're communicating and then go back to that and either agree or disagree, and then share why I agree or disagree. And for me, a real key is I need to do that responsibly. I don't need to be making anybody wrong, because that's not what it's about. It's about entering a conversation and trying to find a common solution or a common goal to where you can try to move forward. And I think we all realize from time to time, we are successful in doing that, but other times we are not successful in doing that. And I would like to think it's because of the other individual that I'm speaking with, but sometimes it's me. I get that. And I'm ashamed to say it, but it's true. Sometimes it is me. And it's because I buy into the rhetoric instead of being objective.
Appreciate your
I'm,
honesty.
I'm totally in agreement with this. I'm going to add this one thing because I think it would be very helpful for everybody who is listening to this to just add one more piece to what Michael just put out there. Many of us react not just to the words that are being said, but we're actually reacting to what's not being said.
Yes.
It's why we have the reaction that we have. When you point out one mistake that I made, but you don't point out all the great things that I've done, that reaction is a lot of times what's needed. If it was said, you usually do everything great in this one little spot you overlooked, it's received so much differently. So really question your reaction. Is it what the other person's saying? Or is there part of the story that they're leaving out of the words that they're choosing that you can fill in that would actually be more in alignment with the person that you thought you were dealing with on the other side? And I think that that's a real powerful thing to consider as well. Not only what are you hearing, but what is not being said that really has you in a stir. I think that's why the Black Lives Matter can be such an issue, because people react to what's not being said with it without realizing, no, this is just a separate conversation. It doesn't exclude everybody else. This is just a separate conversation, but people react if they don't fit into that scope because they think you're saying then everything else doesn't, but there's more to it. So thank y'all.
Sound like the
Well said.
Pharisees, Miss Addie. Sound like the Pharisees.
Yeah, you know, what you're saying is so key, and you know, you hit right on it, is that we are not listening to what other people are saying. We're busy presenting our position. With race relations, we learn from the people who disagree with us.
Yep.
If we had a conversation here with a white supremacist, with a Ku Klux Klan, there's something I need to learn about belief systems that is key to understanding how we may agree and disagree. But real quick, I jotted down from my notes, bear with me, privilege, entitlement. Entitlement begins in early childhood instruction, when parents ask 2-year-olds what they want to eat or wear. It says, your input is sought and valid to me, if not the world. This, to me, if not the world, is what needs to be heard from me. Then it is validated by people in schools, their friends, social media. Their opinion is valid and should be heard. That is entitlement. Then youth expect parents to continue listening. So when they're obnoxious teenagers and parents are asking, oh my goodness, who told you to have an opinion? Mom, Dad, you did ever since I was 2 years old. Privilege, entitlement. We teach them that they are entitled to what they want, regardless of what anybody else believes.
You, the millennial and just cringed.
See, that's what old
You're
school
learning.
and millennial.
You're
No
learning. You're
shade to
learning.
my other millennials, but
Yeah.
that's a trigger. That was a trigger right there.
You're learning. You're learning.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I mean, it's been an honor. It's been a pleasure, man. As always, you guys rock. I mean, it's so much knowledge and so much wisdom on here. It's youth and elder, and I just love it. I really do. I encourage everyone to always be in acceptance of someone else's opinion. Be in acceptance of someone else's train of thought. It's theirs. It's not yours. You don't know how they got it. You don't know how they came to that train of thought, but you know it's theirs. It's not yours. So there's no need to get upset about something that's not yours. I don't understand that theory, but I want to leave you with this right here. And Miss Ed, you know I love reading my word. So when I look at the word and I go back to Genesis 25, I believe, and we look at the story of Esau and Jacob. I have to use these words, you know, when they preach that, you know, Jacob is the one that took Esau's birthrights for all my Bible scholars, and him and his mom got together and they put on Esau's way, his identity of what he looked like. So my man Isaac could bless him. Peep game. This is what I'm looking at, and I want you to do this. This is the way of combating what we're dealing with right now, and I call it the replacement identity. The reason I'm saying that, and the reason I took the story from the Bible, Esau and Jacob, is Jacob replaced his identity. In Tulsa, Oklahoma, there was a tragic over 100 years ago that was all based off a lie. The way that you combat certain things, it's just like relationships. You put yourself in that position. You replace your identity for a second. If all my white family would just take a moment, close your eyes, and just really meditate for a second or two, that my whole family, my sisters, my brothers, my children, my aunts, uncles, grandmas, how much wisdom, how much fun, how much love that was completely destroyed off a lie. Replace your identity with that just for a few minutes. Once you walk just a foot in my shoes, you might understand the mile that I run. But you have to replace your identity just for a little while. I'm not asking you to try to go through and rewrite history and say, you know, we should have been slaves, the whites should have been slave, and go through the whole, you know, traumatic. No, I'm asking you to really take a moment and just try to understand. The whole conversation today, with everybody's suggestion, with the listening, the speaking, the hearing, all it ties into is understanding. Understand the way that I feel about this certain situation. Once you understand the way that I feel about it, me and you can get along. We can rock and roll. We can do a lot of great things together. We can express so much love. We can feed the poor. We can enable the rich to understand better. We can keep the middle class popping. We can actually live together and not just exist in one corner from another. Understand each other. That's the entitlement that Christ has put on us. Understand it. When we said that a while ago about the Pharisees, that's what they did. They took everything that Christ didn't do, or they couldn't understand the concept. It's the same act. It's all in history. Get your understanding of the other individual that does not look like you. Love them for their understanding. And as we always say, Miss Addie, we love it, we love it, we love it. If each individual does the individual job, that is what makes a team. I love you with the love of Christ, man. Y'all be blessed, be safe. We will talk at you soon. More shows are coming. Stay tuned, stay blessed, man. Much love to you guys, man. Peace and blessings. Everybody do the double wave.
Good job.
Amen. Peace and love.